I think coaches in general, we've got a role to step into and to really pioneer that work and to build some of that camaraderie and sportsmanship and teamwork as a unit.
Yeah, and I could just co-sign everything you said. There really is something about suffering long together.
Yeah.
Like, that builds a culture in a team more than anything. I know whenever we were at NSU, there was a lot that didn't go right in the culture of the program, but we were all tight-knit because we just suffered together.
Yeah.
We suffered long together. Our workouts, we grinded, and so that was really the tight-knit thing that brought us together, and I think we don't see that as much anymore.
Hey guys, welcome to the Game Changers League podcast. My co-host Corey Murphy's back with us this week, and we have some special guests here in the studio with us, Cody and Randye Dixon. Won't you tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you do, and we're going to dive into our conversation tonight.
Cool. So I'm Cody. I own Performance Training Center. We
Yeah, that's what we do.
that's pretty much it.
That's
You
it?
go first. Hang on.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, my name's Randye, and so I have a doctorate in physical therapy, and I work at Performance Physical Therapy. It's in the same building as the business we own, Performance Training Center, which I co-own, but I really don't take a lot of part in that. That's all Cody.
Yeah, I get to take the lead on the training side, and really we take anything from your general population people to your college athletes. I love working with all levels of people. We get to see a lot of different people. Yeah, that's really what we do.
Cool. Now, one of the things we know about Cody and Randye is they both were killer athletes in high school. I know Randye went on and had a college career playing softball at Rogers State University. And so talk to us a little bit about that. Yeah, our co-host here played baseball there, so you've heard that name before. But talk to us a little bit about your athletic journey, kind of how it led you into the career fields that you're in now. We want to hear the stories of, like, who were the coaches that impacted your life? Who were, what was the culture like in the programs that you were a part of? And how did all of that shape you and help you grow into the place of where you're at now as business owners, working with young athletes, particularly Cody in that area, the rehab part. I know Randye has done a lot of work with some of the students that we've coached. I've coached my own daughter
On
at
both of
times.
us.
On both of us. So I speak highly on their behalf because they are excellent at what they do. I know whenever I went to Randye, with back pain and things from an injury there, thinking I would never be pain-free, thinking I'd never be able to do some of the things I used to do. I mean, they had me doing things I haven't been able to do since I was in my 20s. So I know that they're good at what they do, and there was a journey that took you, that you guys walked out to get to where you're at. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Y'all are talking me up. My goodness.
Yeah, you want to go ahead? You can kind of start and tell us how you got to RSU.
Yeah, so I played at Ulagal. That's the high school I grew up in. And softball was my main sport. And I actually went to NSU first. That's where I got a scholarship to. And so I started off at NSU, and it just was not a good fit. Honestly, so if I backtrack, high school was my better years as far as athletic-wise goes. And then my senior year, I ended up having an injury and having surgery at the end of our senior season. And I didn't tell my coaches about it because I didn't want it to become an excuse. So I went to NSU, and they had no idea I had this surgery. And the result of it is I really never had the same arm I had before, and it got in my head. And so I never let them know, but it affected my skill level. And so then it affected my playing time. And I went from a starting role as high school, and we won state championship, to I went to NSU, and I was really just fighting for any sort of playing time that I could get. And that was hard. The coaches there, not to say anything negative, but it was just a really hard transition for me. And so I stayed there my freshman year, and then my high school coach ended up getting the coaching job at RSU, and I reached out to her, and I ended up transferring after my freshman year. And knowing that I really wasn't the same athlete that I was before, I was able to make that transition and know my role was going to look a little bit different, but I was ready for it at that time. And so I transferred to RSU, and still I was more of just like a utility player. It was more game time situation. If we needed a short game, they would put me in and I'd bunt or slap. If we needed a pinch runner, I would start every now and then if our left fielder was struggling, but it wasn't like that was my lead role. But really, being able to make that transition and know like that was my job on the team, it was a completely different culture between the two, and it really was more conducive to be able to do that and enjoy it. And I just made the most of it. And so I played there the rest of the time through. I actually ended up trying out for the soccer team and made the soccer team and played soccer my junior year there as well, and I loved that. That was a lot of fun. And it was just a good time. There was no expectation. So coming from a place of a lot of mental hardship of, hey, you went from your lead player at high school to now you're just a utility role player. Being able to go play soccer was really just a time to cut loose and have fun, and so I enjoyed that. But that was really my time at RSU, and I loved it. It was a great time. I would do it over again.
Yeah, I would say too, like, part of your injury, and like that season of your life led you to wanting to go into physical therapy.
Yeah.
And that kind of propelled that.
Absolutely. I actually did physical therapy at the clinic that I'm working at now. And so it was really, I was kind of teetering back and forth between physician's assistant and physical therapy, but that one-on-one personal like interaction that I got with the physical therapist that worked at Performance and owns it is what kind of drove me to wanting to do that and get into that profession.
Yeah.
If this Randye could have treated the young Randye, she would be a household name.
Yeah.
Olympian, potentially. No.
The next Jocelyn Allo, or the previous Jocelyn Allo.
It's true.
Yeah.
I know for me personally, honestly, kind of a similar story in the fact that I also suffered an injury. I went to a small town school not far from here, Adair. We were 2A in most things, I think maybe 3A in basketball, but relatively small. And I kind of played all the sports growing up. I played football, I played baseball, I played basketball, loved running track. Football was kind of my thing. Unfortunately, the summer after my freshman year, I dove into a pool trying to show off for some ladies.
Yeah, that'll get you in trouble.
Yeah.
They don't matter.
Yeah. Turns out the ladies didn't matter. But I actually ended up breaking my neck. I fractured my C4 vertebrae, and that was fortunately, I'm able to walk and I live a life full of activity and I can do pretty much everything I want to do. So looking back on that, I'm fortunate, but that kind of derailed my contact sport career. And so from that point on, I found CrossFit, as something that I could do and really enjoy. And that was what propelled me into the fitness industry. I worked out in sports, but those workouts are not fun.
Yeah.
So I didn't enjoy it. But after my injury, it really kind of changed my perspective and realized hey, there's something special here. And so CrossFit was really my introduction into fitness, and enjoying it. And that's led me to where I am today. I wanted to own a CrossFit gym. Turns out don't own a CrossFit gym, but we own a training center, and I love it. I wouldn't change it. I love CrossFit, but I also love, bodybuilding. I love power lifting. I love all of the things. And so we kind of get to mesh all of it and do our own thing. So it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So talk to me. We've been in this conversation for several weeks now about just the impact of culture in athletic programs. With strength and conditioning, fitness being a big part of every program, right? You from small schools that don't even have a strength and conditioning coach, but just the coaches oversee weightlifting or oversee conditioning. To large schools that have strength and conditioning coaches for different departments. It plays such a huge part. Injury prevention. Just the coming together of a team. In that time. Just in the grind together. So many aspects of it that contribute to the overarching culture of an athletic program. What do you guys see? Having grown up in that, and then now that you're working with student athletes and training, obviously doing that from the outside, but yet in in relationship with athletic directors and coaches and some of the guys that we coach, you'll be working with them. So talk to us a little bit about the impact of strength and conditioning and fitness in the culture of an athletic program.
I would say, man, just off the cuff here, number one, it builds camaraderie, like with the athletes. They begin to like realize that, hey, we are a team. So many times, like, it's a team sport, but athletes are so individual in their stats and how do they look and how do they perform. And so some of that off-season grind really meshes those guys and girls together. Like, we're a unit and we're working together. That was probably one of the biggest things. I will just say, too, like, as this is a freebie here, I think it starts from the top. It starts with your coaches.
Yeah.
And I see so many schools now that their coaches are really failing the athletes. They're not doing the athletes justice. And that's not to say anything bad about the coaches. I think that's just a systemic problem that we've seen overall. And so I think coaches in general, we've got a role to step into and to really pioneer that work and to build some of that camaraderie and sportsmanship and teamwork as a unit. Maybe you could talk a little bit about like the physical aspect of it.
Yeah, and I could just co-sign everything you said. There really is something about suffering long together.
Yeah.
Like, that builds a culture in a team more than anything. I know whenever we were at NSU, there was a lot that didn't go right in the culture of the program, but we were all tight-knit because we just suffered together.
Yeah.
We suffered long together. Our workouts, we grinded, and so that was really the tight-knit thing that brought us together. And I think we don't see that as much anymore. Whether it's we've gotten a little bit soft or parents really don't like to see their kids suffer anymore.
Yeah.
And they kind of step in a little early. I might step on some toes saying that, but
No, I think
we've got to be
absolutely
willing to
true.
let the kids suffer.
Yeah.
A little bit. It really does build their growth. And so, and it has completely, I feel like our injury rates from a physical therapy side, injury rates have skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot goes to, one, the programs themselves, as far as we're spending so much time on skill work and not enough time on just our strength, our conditioning, and moving properly. And so it's really cultivating an environment that's conducive for injury.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it everywhere. But then there's also some onus on the athletes themselves. I know that when we were playing, it was almost expected that you're going to be in the gym in the morning. You're doing some sort of something on your own every day. And you really just don't see that anymore. A lot of times kids are complaining that coaches are requiring too much of them in their own time, and kids are more interested in their free time. And you just really don't see that onus to better themselves every day. And so we're not seeing the same preparation going into stuff. And so that has really changed as far as just that dedication and that desire to be making yourself better every single day. As far as injuries go, I think movement patterns have we have changed the culture that if something hurts, you need to rest.
Yeah.
When it's like, if something hurts, let's figure out what's wrong and let's strengthen it and let's work towards it. But we're so quick to pull athletes out and just make them rest, and then that's not doing anything for them.
Yeah.
We've talked about it so much about you touched on culture and like the suffering long together.
Yeah.
And it's like, as I look back on my career, like those really, when you suffer is when your culture is not, culture's built in those moments, but it's also revealed in those moments.
Yeah, it is.
Like you really do find out whether like, if you want to find out if your team, what your team culture looks like, you kind of want a gauge on it. Make them go through something really, really hard together.
They run 31-10s together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
you go run 1,500-yard sprints back to back to back to back, and let's see how your team responds.
Yeah,
you know, and
absolutely.
you're like it's a revealer of what I'm ingraining into my team as a coach.
Yeah.
It's good feedback.
Absolutely.
And I think that, like, as far as the suffering long together, this is a little bit off topic, but I think coaches use suffering as a little bit of a punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I think if as a coach, I could harness the idea and wrap my head around like, yes, okay, there needs to be some punishment, and yeah, it's got to be hard, or it's not going to be
discipline.
There's not going to be consequence. Right. But like every time we're suffering, it's not punishment. Like this is good. Like, and really shifting the perspective on how I see hard things, because culture impacts the results of games, but it doesn't necessarily. You don't feel the culture when you're in the game.
Right.
The culture is built and felt when life sucks.
Absolutely.
When I feel like I'm gonna die.
Absolutely.
Like, it's those moments that they really are so special.
Yeah. What you say is so true. Like, I can always tell with every team that I've coached what kind of season we're going to have based off on how we approach the off season or the strength and conditioning aspects of it, like early in the season as we're trying to prepare, but more so in the off season, because you can't wait till the season begins. I mean, whenever, basketball here in Oklahoma, we start practice in October and we're playing games, 5 weeks in. And if you wait to start your strength and conditioning 5 weeks before you start a season, number one, you don't have enough time in practices to work on all the stuff that you got to do, install an offense.
Oh, your kids are just going to be too sore.
Yeah. And they're going to whine and cry about it.
We need to normalize soreness. Soreness is fine.
It's
fine.
Normalize a little bit of pain. You know what I mean? We talked about this, I think, may have talked about it a little bit last week with Jeremy. I know that in some of the curriculum that we're rolling out, I talk a lot about increasing your pain threshold. Like, your growth only comes on the other side of pain, and so like learning to be okay with a little bit of pain at all times. And so whenever I've gone into athletic programs, I've talked about this quite a bit at St. John's. Whenever I went there as athletic director, we might have had 10, 15 kids showing up, with any level of consistency in the entire athletic program for summer workouts. I mean, it was terrible, And when we're talking about, at that point, we were a smaller school, we're talking about 80 to 90 athletes. So less than 20%, are showing up to workouts. When we grew to 175, 180 athletes, at that point, all of that changed. We really, like, a major point of emphasis from all of our coaches, was we've got to get our kids in the weight room, in the gym during the summer, You
probably saw the fruit of
on
that.
A track, and we saw the fruit of it. Yeah. I mean, wins went up.
Yeah.
We go from one
Injuries
kid,
went down.
Injuries went down. We never, in the 3 years that I was there, in that first 3 years, we never had any major injury that ended anybody's season.
That's a big deal.
With the exception of one kid who broke his arm diving back into first base. It was just kind of a freak thing.
Accident.
And so, but strength and conditioning had a big part of that. The championships came as a result of that. The kids going to compete, and play in college. Our scholarship offers, everything went up. But it was such a core part of the culture, and it was revealed in how, why they weren't having the success, prior to that, revealed the culture, okay? And then as we begin to implement culture, like, that was a major point of emphasis. We cannot have a successful program if we don't have kids buy into doing the work. You know what I mean? And so it's such a gauge to determine like what kind of seasons are we going to have.
I mean, I even look back on like my JUCO years, and I'm sure any JUCO athlete would resonate with this, is that there's Hell Week.
Yeah.
And there's such a negative connotation around Hell Week of like, oh, they're trying to run kids off. They're just trying to make sure you want to be here, which, I mean, to a degree.
What if they are?
Okay, to a degree, sure.
Know who's
but like, I look back on my Hell Weeks, and they were hell. I mean, some of the worst pain I've been in was during those 2 years of the Hell Weeks that I did. But it's like, I see that, like, my freshman and sophomore year, very different years, both in results oriented. My freshman year, that Hell Week, I was like in utter shock. Now, I'm a kid from small town Oklahoma who never went through anything like that. We didn't have a strength and conditioning program. Like, we didn't have anything like that. But when I went in, I told you, and I've told a little bit of my story on the podcast of like, I always had to work harder. Like, that's what made me the athlete that I was I just worked as hard as I possibly could in everything I did. Like, I just gave everything because I wasn't bigger than anybody. I wasn't stronger than anybody. I wasn't faster, And so I had to work hard. But so I go into Hell Week, and I just see guys slacking off, trying to find any way they can cut a corner, whining and crying, not giving 100%, just trying to get through. It's like, that showed when the season came.
Yeah.
Like in that culture of like, let me see how many corners I can cut. Let me see if there's an easier way to get it done. Like that was the foundation of our season. And when the going got hard in the 9th inning, like we folded like a lawn chair. Yeah. And it's like there really is such a huge piece to it of like it reveals a lot.
Yeah.
There's a quote that we all know, like hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah.
And we don't abide by that.
Right.
You know, it's like we would say that and we would agree with that, but nobody wants to work hard when it matters.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to work hard when no one's looking. Nobody wants to work hard in the off season. Like,
Yeah.
That's the big part. Is nobody's looking.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think that, you know, that's something that we would all know and quote, but are we living by that?
Yeah.
You know?
I think we forget how good it feels too. Like, no one's going to willingly go put themselves in that position. But when you come out of it, like there's really
Nothing
not
like
a better feeling. I guarantee, like if I get together with my old softball teammates or like you went with your old baseball teammates, it's not really going to be your successes and your wins you talk about. Y'all are going to talk about the grindiest practices. You're going to talk about the worst moments. Like that's really what put you together.
Yeah.
I know if Coach texted us and was like, bring your shoes to practice, we knew.
Yep.
But those are the moments we talk about. And that's really just, that's what you remember. That's what shaped you. But, like, that's what made the culture what it was. And that's always what we fall back on our foundation. And, like, that's kind of what gives you that, like, stupid smile of, like, that sucked. But low-key, I kind of liked it.
There's nothing like it when you come out on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, and we went through it together. So now, like, we have a bond as teammates that like you can't even explain in words. Like
you wouldn't know you liked that. If
right.
I shouldn't put you
But it's like when I'm out on the field 6 months later and it's bottom of the ninth, 2 outs. I need 1 out and the bases are loaded. And I look back at my shortstop and I'm like, man, I was bleeding with that dude 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And like a ball goes to him. I got full faith in the world. You know, like there's just something to it of like what it does with our soul of like it bonds us together. And it's just so cool. And like, really quick, like I look to my junior year, the most success we had at Rogers State when I was there, we won the conference championship. That hell week, when I went in, I was expecting the same thing that I got the 2 years prior, but it was like everybody was giving everything. Everybody was going all out. It wasn't the murmurs of like, how can we cut corners? It was the murmurs of like, hey, give it everything you got. Like let's go one more. And it was like, that was like the culture that had been cultivated in that by the athletes, by the coaches, and it showed in our fruit.
Yeah. There's something you said. Let's go one more. Like whenever you think about that, the power of one more. You know, Ed Milet, who's probably one of the greatest performance coaches, you know, in our generation. You know, he talks about that all the time. You know, and wrote a book about it. I mean, just that one more rep, one more. You know, sprint, you know, one more minute of just grinding it out, you know, whatever it may be, there's real power in that. And it, you know, the bond of everybody buying into that concept and what that does for you as a team is incredible. You know, I'm a firm believer, and I'd love to hear you guys, you know, what your thoughts are on this, that, you know, schools need to learn to invest. I think every school athletic program needs to have 2 coaches that most of them don't have. One is a strength and conditioning coach, you know, just a full-time strength and conditioning guy, you know, or coach at, you know, at that level. And then a character coach, you know, somebody who's just in touch with the players about, you know, how they're handling adversity in their lives, how they're dealing with, you know, the challenges in the classroom, you know, personal struggles they may be going through. I just think that like every program should have that. The impact that would have on the lives of these students and on the program itself is huge. You know, talk to me about, you know, that aspect of it, because, you know, at the high school level, you don't see a lot of that. You know, it's normally just a football coach who's got a little bit of strength and conditioning experience, like you do it, but they don't have the time.
We write that off to college. You know.
I think. Well, you said character coach. That's something that you don't hear often, and I like that a lot. I think athletes would benefit from that tremendously. I know that we're talking about go one more. I had a football coach, and Coach Lippy from Adair, you know, great guy, love him.
So awesome.
He had a saying that it was, you can do anything once, and I hated that saying. It was the worst thing ever. He would use it every day, no matter what we were doing, and I didn't want to hear it. But I find myself now as a sports performance coach using that saying. And it's like, where did that come from? I didn't make that up. You know, he instilled that in me at a young age. And now, like, the fruit of that carries on, and it's so true. You know, we're talking about bonding, and teams bond from that. And I think, you know, those are just little things that kids take with them that don't even realize it. And so to a character coach, man, that would be a really cool thing to see, especially at a young age. You know, kids are so vulnerable at 16, 17, 18 years old. Like, I mean, we're talking life-changing times in their life that let's build some character here. Let's get some guidance here. And then, of course, from a strength and conditioning standpoint, I may be biased here, but gosh, I mean, we've seen so many injuries coming from lack of knowledge in the weight room.
Yeah.
We've seen so many injuries, you know, because there's a famous saying in the strength and conditioning world, you can't shoot a cannon out of a canoe. And it's true. You know, think about what happens if you try to shoot a cannon out of a canoe. We see all these crazy exercises on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, and it's like, okay, this looks really cool. Let's try this. Well, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to put your athletes at risk of injury.
Yeah.
And so the knowledge that comes with a true strength and conditioning coach or a performance coach, there's so much benefit to that. And it goes beyond just injury. You know, once we build that foundation, and now we're not shooting out of a canoe anymore, now we've got some structure underneath us. Now it's like you have a performance coach or a strength and conditioning coach that knows how to take you to the next level.
Yeah.
You've got high school coaches that know what their coaches told them to do and what their coaches told them to do. You know, it's like, and things are changing. And so, you know, strength and conditioning coaches that are up with the times, that are involved, there's just so much benefit to it. So
piggybacking off of that, like, I don't know why this comes to mind first off, but so many of our coaches are, I don't want to say are old school, but have been doing it for so long. And when they were weightlifting back in the day, just like the easiest example of a squat, of like they're taught to look up at the ceiling and find a spot on the wall whenever they squat.
I was taught that exact same thing.
That's the worst thing you could tell someone to do.
Is.
But the thing is, it's like we're not educating ourselves on new technology. There's so much science behind exercise. And granted, they just don't have the time. I don't think it's necessarily that they don't care. It's just they're studying plays. They're studying their next skill movement. And so when it comes to the weight room, they just don't have the time to do that research and to get up to date on what proper movement looks like. And so they're just coaching from what they were taught. But that's why we're seeing so many injuries. So if we have someone who's dedicated to that specifically, I think we would see a huge benefit. As far as the character coach thing goes, I think that Coach Vaughn at RSU, props to her. She did an amazing job. She was our coach, but what she required of us every day before we went to practice, and this was on your own time, but it better be done before practice starts, is a journal. And in the journal, you wrote 3 short-term goals that you wanted for that week, I think is what it was. But there were 3 short-term goals, but then below each goal, you had to write what you personally were going to do to reach those goals. One of them was character-wise. One of them was, like, as far as it went, like, on the field. And then there was another one that could just be anything. And really what that did is it put the onus on us to reach what we wanted to reach. But then it also just gave us a buy-in to the program of, like, hey, we all have goals here. And for me, it was like, yeah, you may want a starting role, but that's not your position right now. So your goal needs to be realistic to the culture of this program. And so that was something that she implemented, and she still does it today as far as I know. I have some of our athletes that come in, and all of her players are bought in. And I think it's because she's willing to do the little things like that.
And they just won a national championship 2 years ago. I mean, the fruit of that shows.
She turned that program around so much. And I think it's just because she's willing to do the small things to not only build into the athlete, but to build into the person. And so there's buy-in there.
That's huge.
The strength and conditioning thing, like, and I don't think that we realize you literally can change the trajectory of somebody's life. Like,
absolutely.
Not even just on the negative side, but on the positive.
Right.
Like, you could hurt yourself doing a squat the wrong way. But, like, you build a solid foundation in a high school athlete, the success that they could have in college and professional, and then go beyond sports, like, for life, learning how to move properly, learning how to be able to carry your kids and carry your grandkids. Like, it goes so much further.
Quality of life.
Quality of life. It goes so much further. I can't remember. Trace Kennedy uses the term, it's lifespan and health span. And he talks about, like, how long you're going to live, but how long are you going to be healthy? And it's like, that's such a massive deal. Like, the improvement in the quality of life that you can experience from the things that you can be taught when you're in high school is massive. Now, I might be dabbling in a little bit of politics here, but like too much are put on high school coaches, because like you said, they don't have time for that.
Right.
And they have one assistant or two assistants. Only when you get into the 6A level in Oklahoma do you have things like strength and conditioning coaches and all that. So it's like, well, we don't have the funding, so we're just going to have the head coach do it all. And it's like, we need to do something to figure out a way. And I think it's from this conversation of recognizing the impact that it has to say, okay, no, this is necessary. This is just as necessary as their education. If I want them to know things for the rest of their life, how much more do we want to be able to move properly for the rest of our life?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And you got a lot of schools out there, man, that are small schools, private schools, where like you got coaches that are working full-time jobs, not even at the schools. So they're not even with the kids throughout the day. And so whenever they get with the kids, like they're having to kind of catch up and pick up, try to figure out what's going on in these kids' lives, or where your grades at, all of that type of stuff. And so they definitely don't have the time. And so, it just depends on, only the larger schools that have those kind of resources have that. But there are athletes all over. I mean, we saw just at St. John's in 3 years, 11 or 12 guys that went on and played college football, baseball, volleyball, basketball, so, I mean, and that was a small school that had one full-time person in the athletic department at the school. That was me, And so whenever you got guys coming in after working a job all day, and then they're going home to try to spend time with their families, they don't have the time for that. But there's still kids at those schools that deserve the best of what we can give them.
100%.
And so, the way we did that, we had some guys that had a little bit of experience, in the weight room, guys that went through college programs. Some of our coaches had played, collegiately, so they'd gone through some of that, so they knew what it looked like. But then we had a guy in our community, similar to Cody, who Terrace, who that's what he did. He trained athletes, and he was a certified, personal trainer. And so, but he worked specifically with a lot of athletes, and had success with that, and we tried to get as many of our kids around him and him around our program as much as we could, so that, he could be a voice to what we were doing, and there were a lot of things that, he was able to challenge me on, because I did not come from that background. I did the workouts that we did, but we did not have strength and conditioning, certified personal trainers, those type of guys working with us, so I think there's so much value in it, and more, but once again, so we're talking about the individual impact it can have on students, as well as the impact that it has on the overall program by impacting your culture. It's where your culture is built.
And the culture you're talking about, sorry to interrupt, when we're talking about culture, we're not just talking about of a sports team. We're talking about, you have the culture of the sports team, then you have the culture of the staff, you have the culture of the entire school. It's a big deal. And what you just said, you having that guy that comes around and is around your kids, you need to get him around your kids, you need to get your kids around him, and him being around you, that's a piece of culture that your kids are observing. Hey, I function by relationship. I want to be in relationship with these people. And it doesn't always have to be financial. No, I'm not going to place an expectation on him to give me full access to everything that he does. But just by the nature of relationship, my nature of relationship with Cody. Now our introduction was church, and then really it was gym where it was found. But it was by the nature of our relationship, me just being around him, I wanted more of I need more fitness. I need to be more fit. I need to focus on it. I need to bring intentionality into my life. That is a huge aspect of your culture that changes that you can't even really visibly see.
Right.
But you experience the fruit of it.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. And I mean, that was the same experience for me, whenever I met these guys. I mean, it was, one, I went to Randye for back pain. Can you just get me some relief? And then while we were in there, Cody's like, well, I can show you some things that help actually strengthen that to where you're not. And then it, I just busted up in the middle of y'all's workouts one morning, uninvited, and
Great
just
time.
I'm just gonna throw myself in there, and man, and we talked about that whole suffering together thing.
Yeah.
There is no way in this world I would have been able to get myself to do the things that I did if I did not have Corey Murphy saying, you're going to eat this workout. Let's go. Like, you know, you're a dog. Like, let's go. And pushing me to, you know, harder. Cody pushing me harder, you know. And next thing I know, you know, I'm doing stuff that I haven't done in years.
Yeah.
You know. And so, man, there's power in that. And, you know, I love what you guys do. I love what you do for this community. I love, you know, what you do for, you know, a lot of the young athletes in the area. I love what you've done for me. So this is a great conversation. So I really appreciate you guys coming in. And I'm telling you, like, I want you to, you know, give a shameless plug for your business, you know, what you're doing here in this area, and just for the whole strength and conditioning, you know, performance training community.
Yeah, well, you know, shameless plug goes a long way. So, Performance Training Center, located here in Claremore. We love athletes specifically. That really is our passion. The younger generation, and just seeing them be healthy, and love to work out, love to move correctly. Randye, from a rehab standpoint, loves to see people come out of an injury and do things that they never thought they could. And our heart is really for that. And then me, from the sports performance side of things, I love seeing an athlete go to that next level. You know, I never thought, man, I want to dunk a basketball. Let's do it. You know, I want to be able to run, you know, this time. Let's do it. You know, like those things are achievable. That's real life goals. You just gotta have the resources, and we're honored to be where we are, when we would love to be that resource. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think you crushed it. It's been a great time, and I'm excited to see just how much it grows.
Yeah.
Really, just because that's our passion, is to not only, there's a fire in us, but to see that lit in other people as well.
Yeah.
Because I really think there's something about just the discipline of it, that it doesn't just stay in a gym, but that discipline kind of carries on to the rest of your life, and you create that discipline there, and you're going to see it, the overflow of it.
Absolutely. And the one thing that I will just say, you know, about these guys, and about, you know, just coaching in general, and the heart of it and the passion of it. One thing I know about Cody and Randye is they are highly relational. Oh, yeah. You know, I'm so grateful for the impact that you had on my daughter, you know. Playing in volleyball this past year, I mean, you know, they put her in a position she had never played before. She's a little undersized, and they moved her to middle hitter, you know. Yeah. And before it was all said and done, she was All-State, you know, an All-State selection. But she came to you with an injury, you know, and
I
you
think a couple of them.
Yeah, a couple of them. I mean, she was fighting it all year.
She had low back. She came in with a boot one day.
Yep, came in with a boot one day with a bad ankle, and you know, you had her ready to play by senior night after she sprained her ankle the day before. Yeah. You know, and but not only did you treat her, you spoke into her life. You encouraged her. She was walking through a very tough time personally this past year, and the encouragement that you gave, and just the life that you gave and poured into her was just huge. And so, you know, that's the quality of character that comes with the performance training we're talking about. You know, it's not just about results; it's relationship before results. Yeah. But whenever you've got that approach, relationship before results are going to come. You know? And the impact y'all had on her, I can't thank you enough for that. The impact you've had on me, I can't thank you enough. And I'm telling you, if you're anywhere in the Tulsa, Oklahoma area, and you're looking for somebody to help take you to the next level, these guys can do it. You know, 100%. If you're looking for somebody to help you rehab and get back to the place where you know you can be, these guys can do it. So just want to encourage that. And man, thank you for coming in tonight, being a part of this conversation. And, you know, for all the coaches, ADs, administrators, athletes that are out there listening, don't be afraid of the grind. Embrace the grind, you know, and as administrators, realize, like, these are the guys you need in your athletic program, helping to shape the lives of your students and teaching them how to do the work. Yeah. So, yeah, I think we'll end on that. And look forward to being with you next time.